Everyone knows that feeling, wanting to experience more stories, but struggling to find the time. That's where Audible changes everything. With over 1 million audiobooks and Audible originals, there's a story waiting to spark anyone's imagination. Take The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley, the gripping psychological thriller that's keeping listeners on the edge of their seats. Imagine unraveling its mysteries during your morning commute, or losing yourself in its twists and turns while doing household chores. That's the magic of Audible. It transforms daily routines into opportunities for thrilling discoveries. The best part? Members get access to thousands of included titles, with new content added regularly. From bestsellers to hidden gems, every genre imaginable is at their fingertips. And with one easy-to-use app, switching between favorites or discovering new passions has never been simpler. There's more to imagine when you listen. Start a free 30-day Audible trial and get your first audiobook free at audible.com/Wondery. That's audible.com/Wondery.
You buy a pair of socks, that's 2 socks. You buy a pair of Bombas socks, that's 4 socks. Because one purchased is one donated. Socks are the #1 most requested clothing item in homeless shelters. So when you buy a pair of super comfortable Bombas socks, you're also donating a pair. Bombas customers have powered over 150 million donations. So Bombas would like to thank you 150 million times. But we only have like 30 seconds. Go to bombas.com and use code AUDIO for 20% off your first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com and use code AUDIO at checkout.
Today on The James Altucher Show.
It wasn't until I was like midway through it that I figured it out that it was about ego. I nailed that. So I usually like just don't talk about it until it's like well underway and it exists.
You can't write a book for the sake of writing a book. That's how bad books are written.
One of the traps of our time is that you have to have an opinion on every issue.
I think people have to get along before they can have any sway on someone's opinions. Who's actually benefiting from you?
Well, yeah, who has the audience, right? Do you have the audience or does the audience have you? What kind of success is it that you actually have less freedom once you've achieved it?
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is The James Altucher Show.
So what have you been mostly up to? Is it like, I know you have a book coming out in October.
Yes, I do. I think it's October. So I'm finishing that. And then, yeah, starting to think about the next one.
What do you think is going to be the next one?
I know, I'm just not saying.
Okay, I respect that. I think talking about it sometimes kills the energy a little.
No, totally. That's I think, well, it's two things. Talking about it is a way to kind of get credit in advance.
Yeah, it's like
people
that
are like, oh, it's so
dopamine hit.
amazing, you know, whatever. I try to avoid that. But also I find that it's very discouraging to me because if I had my arms wrapped around it, I'd have probably done it already.
Yeah.
I'm still like thinking about it. And so if I like describe it to you, it's going to sound stupid. And then your reaction is going to influence my, you know what, like I'll be able to tell you exactly what it is and what it's about when I'm almost done.
Yeah.
And if I'm doing it now, you know?
I feel like you were able to do that before though, with like you had such a solid grounding with like ego is the enemy and you know the whole series of Stoicism books. I think you were able to more you know like when there's concept that is just really solid, I think you don't have that problem.
Yeah, but see, Ego is the Enemy started as a book about humility. So if you're like, what are you working on next? And then I'm like, oh, I'm doing this book about humility.
Because I'm the expert.
You'd be like, oh, okay, cool, good for you. I hope that does well. You know, and I'd be like, it wasn't until I was like midway through it that I figured it out that it was about ego. I nailed that. So I usually like just don't talk about it until it's like well underway and it exists.
I think that's good. Like I think, you know, I wrote 1 to 2 books a year from 2003 to 2021.
Yes.
And then I haven't, so this is like the first time as an adult that I haven't written a book in a couple of years.
Do you feel backed up?
Very much so. But I think you have to be true to yourself. Like, you can't write a book for the sake of writing a book. That's how bad books are written.
You've always seemed to me as someone who sort of is compulsively creative. Like I thought when you were doing your comedy stuff, I saw that as like, oh, actually, social media, writing online, and doing books. James is like, no, he's just having to mainline it like directly from the source. Like we were like trying to get to the most unadulterated form of like expression, reaction, expression, reaction. That's sort of what I saw you chasing there.
Yeah, and I never thought of it that way, but you're right. A book, there's a very long waiting time between starting the book and getting the dopamine hit from releasing the book. But in stand-up comedy, you get that hit or not every day. And if you don't get it one day, you just go back the next day or the next hour and go for it. And that's true. And also it's a very high pressure creativity. Like I need material for tonight. And so you have to be writing every day. And you notice this with comedians, like even like take someone like Jerry Seinfeld, who's so successful as the greatest television show creator ever. He would say, if you say, well, what do you do for a he would say, I'm a comedian. Like comedians are comedians at the core. And ultimately I was not a comedian. So that's not my core. But for comedians, that's their core. No matter what else, Kevin Hart, more of a movie guy and a production guy than a comedian, but he's a comedian at the core.
Yeah, no, I think you're someone who has things to say. You have a point of view or a voice, and I think I've watched you. I was thinking about this on the way here. I would have started reading your stuff in 2010, so it's crazy to me that it's been 15 years. And I was realizing like one of the first articles I read from you was an article you wrote about not going to college or dropping out of college, and I realized that article hit me because I was still relatively close to having done that. Like that's how long ago it was in my life that I was like, oh, this guy's like speaking to this thing that I did that I'm still not sure if it was the right decision or not. Because like I don't know the end of the story yet.
Right.
And so like you've always struck me as a person who has strong opinions, and you've been trying your hand at lots of different outlets with a whole bunch of success. You sort of succeeded in each one of the mediums, but that you're like a point of view guy. That's what you are.
Yeah, point of view. It's an interesting thing, point of view, because, and that means something different now than I think it meant 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Like now, there's only 2 points of view, and you're either like
What, woke and anti-woke or what?
or just like either Trump or anti-Trump or whatever. And like I have actually like no interest in that. And so then the question is, what's ethical? Like, do you need to have an interest in that? Like I was talking to Mehdi Hassan and he was like, you need to have an interest in this. And but I was more like, I'm more interested in how I can become a better person. And then as just a side effect of that if people relate to that, then how other people become better people.
Sure.
And it's like different layers of where you should focus. So if I focus on, let's say, this other layer, then it might distract me from how I can become a better person. Like maybe how I become a better person by convincing people to have one stance or another when I don't even know. Like Ukraine's a great example. I have no clue other than what people tell me about what's going on in Ukraine. And so I can have a stance based on what people tell me. But then in terms of me then regurgitating that stance, I'd rather talk about what adventures I'm going through that make me a better person.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the traps of our time is that you have to have an opinion on every issue.
Well, and people say silence is violence. So they make you feel like it's unethical if you're silent.
Well, and it's hard because there is some truth to that, right? If
Yes.
they're taking people away to concentration camps and you don't have an opinion because you're really into physics, that you're complicit in that happening, right? And so there obviously at some level silence is violence. At the same time, the idea that everyone should have an opinion on everything all at the same time is partly what you could argue. There's also a form of violence in that. Like what
Yeah.
we used to have this impression, and this is like a very 20th century opinion that sort of worldview, that authoritarian governments were about depriving people of information and enforcing sort of silence or whatever. And now what authoritarian regimes realize is that it's much easier to allow an ungodly amount of information, contradictory information out in the world. And then people just get confused and tune out, or they're able to tell themselves whatever is comforting, right? And so you could also argue that noise is violence, because what it allows for is people to do sneaky shit or to do not sneaky shit, but just to do it in such a way that they get away with it. And so I think the idea that everyone should have every opinion all the time and be talking about it all the time is also wrong. There's some middle ground that each individual, and then certainly each person with a platform or a brand or an audience, has to figure out the right amount of also.
It's true. I guess in all that you just said, all that's true is the has to that you said in the last sentence there is where I wonder, like, what do I have to do? Like, I'm not obligated
No,
to my
no.
platform.
Well, that's true. You don't have to do anything, and that's what makes it an ethical choice.
Right. But then that's interesting, though. Right. So there's a line where, of course, if I'm a physicist and that's all I'm interested in, but my neighbor is going to a concentration, I have to speak about that. That I could see. But you know, I sort of miss like 2011 and 2012 because nobody actually cared whether Barack Obama or Mitt Romney won. I mean, people did. Like, if you're a Democrat, you wanted Barack to win. If you're a Republican, you wanted Mitt Romney to win. But nobody talked about it. I remember every other election. I don't remember 2012's election day.
Well, look, in normal times, most people don't have to be political because there's an Overton window where, okay, they might disagree this way or this way, but there's a sort of a box that we're all in relative agreement that these are the sort of assumptions. I think the problem is what has happened is what we're now sometimes calling political issues are actually sort of fundamental, like, social contract issues. And they're actually like, I think sometimes people think I'm political, and I'm actually not really talking about the passage of SB 112 or, like the name of some law. Like, I'm actually talking about philosophical issues, and our politics have gotten so toxic that we're not talking about politics, but we're talking about bedrock philosophical things. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, particularly the toxicity. Like, I feel like the problem now is people can't have conversations. Like, and like I'm pro-choice, but I have a business partner who's pro-life, and we've been business partners since 1999. Like, he's kind of in the background of a lot of my business stuff, and we've never once had an argument, even though we've discussed pro-life, pro-choice stuff. Like, he adopts kids, like he puts his life where his opinion is. And I strongly disagree, but there's no point in arguing because, like, he's got his view. I'm not going to change his mind, and he's not going to change mine. But I think people have to get along before they can change, have any sway on someone's opinions.
yeah, I do think a part of it is probably rooted in the fact that what social media is built around is the solicitation of opinion, right? Like, it requires you. The fuel of social media is opinion and judgment.
I would say now, but like 10 years ago, I don't think that was the case. Like, I could talk about, oh, here's the 10 things I did when I was broke and depressed to kind of overcome that. And that would get attention because people believed me and they trusted me and they would know my story or learn my story. And then they would want to repeat or emulate what I did.
So the big switch, and like Jonathan Haidt's talked about this, but so like they say like social media is bad for kids or whatever. Actually, when you look at the data, it's not like social media has been around a long time. It's actually not like the mental health levels or whatever they track in kids to sort of see the spike. It's actually not like the day Twitter is invented or the day Facebook is invented. It's right when the social networks switched from a chronological feed to an algorithmic feed.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think about this even with podcasting, which I'd be curious to have your take. I'll talk about that in a second. But the switch from chronological to algorithmic, or even what TikTok does, which is switch it even from the social graph to purely the viral graph, right? Is the switch from, hey, I like that person, I want to follow them, to this is what's being surfaced to me based on what the algorithm thinks will be the most engaging to me and based on what other people are sharing. And so it breaks social media from being this way to follow different people or things that you're interested in to being this thing that surfaces the most extreme, the most invigorating, the most outrageous, whatever, right? That's the fundamental switch. And that's why it goes from, people talking about their interesting lives to like sort of all politics, all division, all culture war stuff all the time.
Yeah, and you're right. So, and then not only the problem is the algorithm exists as almost as an entity. So it's not like I'm tweeting something controversial, so people are going to follow me because of the algorithm. It's we're both catering to the algorithm. Like now people tweet because they know it feeds this giant algorithm monster, and that people then are also praying down to, like, I'm going to go to the algorithm monster to look at all to feel exciting and interesting.
Well, instead of being a point of view guy,
Yeah.
like, here's what I think. What happens, I think I've seen this happen to so many people I know. They were sort of a point of view person. They had an audience. They were putting stuff out. And then they touch upon an issue, or they say something, or they connect in some way. And then they become all that all the time.
Right, which I think is very limiting. Like, I
Yes.
feel like when I began the podcast, it was about what I cared about and what I was interested in. And I keep it that way. I mean, I've had some drift in different directions, but so many people say, "Oh no, you will get so many more downloads and followers if you pick one side or the other and you just go all in." I can't do it because A, I'm not that interested in that, and B, I don't think I serve anybody. If you're just preaching to the echo chamber, who's actually benefiting from you?
Well, yeah, who has the audience, right? Do you have the audience, or does the audience have you?
Right.
And I think that's what happens.
And that's always the challenge with every writer. Like, if you're just like, oh, I have to write books about Stoicism because that's what my audience wants, then you just became a slave to your audience.
Totally.
And the challenge for any creative is to not be a slave to your work.
Yes.
I mean, that's why you see, like,
that's why you got into it. It was for the expression, not to be corrupted and controlled by some algorithm. That seems like what kind of success is it that you actually have less freedom once you've achieved it?
Yeah, I mean, you can argue the brain. There's a built-in algorithm in the brain. I'd say it's like Joseph Campbell's arc of the hero, the hero's journey. And you have to cater to that structure in the brain that appeals to heroic journeys. But that's about it.
Well, I'm thinking about writing this article that I was once very bullish on podcasts, and now I'm increasingly beginning to think they're very bad for you. So, like, and I think part of it is the switch from a feed-based universe. Like, if you think about podcasts 5 or 10 years ago, a podcast is something you subscribe to. It's long form. It's the ads are pre-sold. So whether an episode does 1 million views or 1 million listens or 500 listens, like, you already sold it, right? It's not sort of sold in this real-time marketplace. It's primarily conversational. And so I thought those are all relatively positive elements of a medium that I think are designed to produce intelligent, good information. Now, what happens is podcast goes from being just video or just audio to also video. And video, like, people, a good chunk, 30 to 40% of the people who are consuming this episode will be watching it on YouTube. That's why I have this studio, right? but YouTube is inherently algorithmic. So it becomes how the thumbnail of the episode and the title of the episode and how many comments it generates and, right, the watch time, all these other forces are now operating on you as a content creator. And then I would say the other thing is they now sell real-time ads in your thing. So, like, for people to understand, you plug in this, like, little chunk of code and they sell ads in that code. So if the episode blows up, they serve more ads. If it doesn't, whatever, they serve less. And so there's a greater sort of connection between content and profit. And then I think the other thing that I'm realizing is that, like, when McLuhan said the medium is the message, what he was saying is that, and Neil Postman talked about this too, whatever the medium goes towards or elicits from the creator or is most conducive to, it shapes the kind of content, right? And so, like, it's very hard. I think people think that podcasts are good because it has, like, two people who disagree talking with each other, or it's like maybe people outside the mainstream or whatever. Actually, what I think a 2-hour conversation is really good for is bullshit. Like, it's very, like, I'm not going to have you here and then, like, hold your feet to the fire for 2 hours. That's like, that'd be incredibly awkward on a personal level. Do you know what I mean?
Also boring.
And, well, yeah, sort of that too. But I guess what I'm saying is that what the friendliness of the medium actually allows crazy people and bullshit artists and manipulators and whatever who are good to use the medium to introduce shitty ideas or untrue things.
But do you think that's true for every medium?
Yes, but it's harder to insert outright nonsense and bullshit into a mainstream newspaper than a 3-hour conversation where both people are smoking weed. You know what I mean?
And also, you have to understand with podcasts, I'm talking about audio podcasts now. You have a captive audience because they're either in their car or they're at their gym. That's where people consume podcasts. And so they're not switching while they're driving. They're not switching while they're on the treadmill. So it's probably more than most media, you have a captive audience.
Yes. And so you can kind of do these meandering long form, like when I hear people talk about things that I really know about, I'm like, you're not even close, you know? And so it's interesting to watch people and I think any medium as it develops, there's this kind of innocence and purity in the early days. And then people who need access to an audience get really good at figuring out how to sort of inject themselves into, like, I think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a great example of a person who's just utterly full of shit and probably like literally insane, who has figured out that, oh, this medium is conducive to spreading my type of thinking because it's fundamentally unrigorous and there's fundamentally a captive audience. And you don't go to a podcast to get political or medical advice for the most part. But if your favorite comedian is interviewing that person, now that's being downloaded directly into your brain in a way that I think if he was forced to defend himself on television or in a debate or in an op-ed, it would fall apart.
It's true because I had him on my podcast and I knew I am for vaccines, but I don't know anything. I don't know any facts.
Right.
And he knows a lot. And then we were going to talk about his autobiography, but then he goes for 20 minutes on this stuff. And I just don't know how to, I can't respond to him. I don't know how to respond.
And you're like, we got 3 hours left or 2 hours left in this interview. I'm not going to be like, well, that was bullshit. You're not going to say that, right? And you're not 60 Minutes or something where your job is to be hostile if they're, it's not an interrogation. And so what it does is I think it enables stuff to spread. It's an unfair playing field. And so I don't know. When I hear people tell me that they listen to lots of podcasts, I usually go like, I might switch the ratio. I think podcasts are good if you read a lot, if you talk to lots of smart people, if you have other information inputs and you also have a strong base of knowledge. I think podcasts can be great. They can be additive. But if you're just like a long haul truck driver and you just do nothing but listen to podcasts all day, I think it will destroy your brain. It's bad for you.
What should the long form truck driver?
I think think about like an audiobook and a podcast sound essentially the same, right? But the amount of effort that goes into one versus the other, it's not even on the same planet.
Right, because an audiobook will take you, let's say, 2 to 3 years to make.
And it has to be worth paying for. It's designed to last for a long period of time. It's been at least edited the person went over it several times. There was an editor and a copy editor and a legal review. And then there was a process. It's not a perfect process, but there was, the result. There's some stress applied to it. And then what a podcast is for the most part is a thought literally coming off the top of that person's head.
Take a quick break. If you like this episode, I'd really, really appreciate it. It means so much to me. Please share it with your friends and subscribe to the podcast. Email me at altucher@gmail.com and tell me why you subscribed. Thanks. I want to tell you how I'm going to start my next business. And I just want to say, I always have a hard time with paperwork. Like, how do I register an LLC? What state do I do it in? What forms do I fill out? I'm incompetent when it comes to any kind of paperwork. But I'm going to use this company, Northwest Registered Agent. That's Northwest Registered Agent. You could use them and you could build your business in just 10 clicks and in 10 minutes or less. Starting a business should be all about ideas and executing and getting customers and building a product. It shouldn't be all this complicated rules and paperwork, but Northwest Registered Agent makes it super simple. They've been helping businesses launch and grow for nearly 30 years. They know what they're doing. And if you want to build your business while keeping your business information secure, Northwest is the partner you need. So don't wait. Protect your privacy, build your brand, and set up your business in just 10 clicks in 10 minutes. You can get more information. Just visit northwestregisteredagent.com/James. That's the key part. And start building something amazing. Whatever idea you have, just start. Just start the business today. It's super cheap. Get more with Northwest Registered Agent at northwestregisteredagent.com/James.
In the time it takes you to actually board that flight from Group 8,
Now boarding Premier Altitude Elite Club members.
you could have bought a Hyundai on Amazon. Yes, that Amazon, where you buy everything else.
Mid-tier Altitude Elite, feel free to board now.
So while you're waiting for them to make up new boarding groups, you can order your dream car and the dealer will have it ready in no time.
Now boarding groups 1 through 7.
So close. Visit HyundaiUSA.com or call 562-314-4603 for more details. Limited availability, pickup through participating Hyundai dealer in select markets.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Well, I wonder then what makes a medium maybe useful or interesting in some way is how much tension there is in the creative process. Your point is in a podcast, look, we could just sit down and start talking, and yes, it's going to be interesting. We've known each other a lot. Well, hopefully it'll be interesting. We've known each other a long time. We've developed a whole industry around podcasting, but a book, there's a lot of tension. It's like what we were talking about earlier. What am I going to write about? Oh, is this good? Is this bad? I'm halfway through writing about it. Should I tell people? Should I change this topic completely? Should I throw this away? It's probably awful. My wife hates this book. And it's this huge tension that it's like a battle for years until you give birth. And podcast is not that way. So even like a TV show, like you mentioned, 60 Minutes, okay, they've got a whole meeting of 30 people get together and decide, okay, well, who's going to be a good guest? And then you 5 research this, you 5 research this, get all the notes together, and hopefully, please God, it'll be a good show.
Yeah, and then they have a 45-minute interview that they're editing down and deciding what shots to go here to set, that they're getting it down to a 14-minute piece or whatever, right? There's a whole, the idea of like just sort of unedited, like here it is.
Yeah.
Again, there's something refreshing about that, and that's why I like listening to them. But there is also, the ease of there's a reason people like making them. It's because it's the easiest of all the things to do.
But sometimes a conversation's great. Like I did just watch Joe Rogan had on Magnus Carlsen, who's the greatest chess player in history, and Joe, you can see, he doesn't really know anything about chess, but is fascinated by somebody who's the greatest in history at a skill, and a skill that's so culturally significant. And so their conversation was fascinating because Joe is such a great conversationalist and is a genuinely curious guy. Whether or not you always agree with him, that doesn't have to do with his skills as a podcaster and conversationalist.
So there's a reason he's the biggest.
Yeah, and Magnus, who's not a conversationalist, almost by definition, he's a chess player, but Joe was able to get out this stuff that Magnus has really thought deeply about for decades And that was interesting to me because it
totally.
is so spontaneous.
Well, then what's the one? Who's the actor that he had on? Did you watch any of the Terrence Howard one?
No, although it's funny, I had never seen Terrence Howard really in a movie, but then I watched after that. I watched little bits and pieces of it, and then I watched Hustle and Flow with Terrence Howard. John Singleton directed, and great movie.
Of course. But you're like, oh, okay, the same medium that's so conducive to getting something interesting out of a great chess player also can allow a person who's clearly bipolar or manic
Ill.
or just like not well.
Love him, but mentally ill.
Yeah, you're watching it, you're like, this is not, like, if you watched a not well person being interviewed on CNN, you would turn it off. Like, it wouldn't work. It doesn't work in the format. But the podcast medium is so forgiving that it allows a not well person to act like they're well. And millions of people listen to it and they go, oh, he really said something there. And it's like, no, this person should have been politely, escorted to a doctor's office.
Well, and the problem is the millions of people listening are not like just sitting at their homes and then they move on to the next podcast. Then they all go on Twitter and talk about it.
Yeah.
And you have literally, it's 50-50. These 50 are defending and saying, yeah, he invented Wi-Fi. And then the other 50 is like, no, that guy has a problem. But they're not, no one's ever going to I just read an anonymous person on Twitter and he changed my mind completely. Like, that's never been said.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting in that way. And at the same time, then you get a completely different feeling when you read a good book where there was that years of tension, like, oh my God, how should I sculpt this sentence and this part of the story? And like you said, it's edited over and over and over again. What's the classic example? Ernest Hemingway, his first book of short stories, his very first book, what's the Farewell to Arms? Was that his first book? Anyway, whatever. Sun Also Rises. He edited it like 100 times.
Yes.
See that you
there's like 50 endings.
Yeah.
Yes. No, totally. It's all that's there. And I would say, honestly, I think most people would be better, myself included, if we listened to more music and fewer podcasts. Because there's something music, you know what music is? No opinions, right? Or if there are opinions, it's mostly about humanity. It's about life itself. It's not opinions about culture war stuff for the most part.
In fact, those songs are probably bad.
Yes.
So even Kendrick Lamar, okay, he just did the Super Bowl show and he had this song, Not Like Us. I love the song, but I almost felt when he mentions Drake in the song that, okay, I really love the whole idea of the song, but I don't know what your personal beef is with Drake, okay, and I have no clue at all. I barely know who you are, but I like this song and I really wanted to hear good lyrics. Like, you listen now to let's say Led Zeppelin and the lyrics, how do they even write those lyrics? It's so beautiful to me. And they're also, they're so personal, but they bring up these, feelings in you that are like, oh my gosh, I forgot I had these feelings listening to these beautiful lyrics. How do they write those songs? I don't even understand how Robert Plant, and I'm just using him as an example. There's millions of great songwriters, not millions, but a lot. But they're so beautiful to me, and I practically cry listening to them. And I feel like that's just not done anymore.
Yeah, I think we're too much of the moment and trying to root things in the now as opposed to sort of rooting them in the kind of fun. What's the last, that Olivia Rodrigo song, Driver's License?
No,
she writes a song. I mean, this came out during the middle of the pandemic. It was this huge song, but she's writing a song about getting her, the feeling of getting her driver's license. And it's a sad song. It's like a poppy sort of it's a teenage girl singing about this. But the reason it becomes this huge hit is because that feeling is such a universal sort of modern part of coming of age, right? I think that the great works of art are rooted in some part of the human experience, even though they're very specific. They are somehow, some version of that happened to me, as opposed to, I think people think of Bruce Springsteen as this kind of not political thing, but that his songs are very class conscious and political, but they're actually about human beings struggling.
Yeah, I never feel the class conscious thing with him. I feel like you either buy into this emotion that he's experiencing or you don't, and it's just emotional.
Yes. Yeah, and the emotions are timeless, even though, so he's right. He's changing characters and eras and, different worldviews, but it's rooted in some thing that whether you're very successful, very unsuccessful, big, small, young, old, there's something in it that connects with you.
Like you two, they come out of this violence in Ireland, and Bloody Sunday is about some this violent historical event in Ireland. I didn't know that when I first heard the song, but I still was able to enjoy the lyrics because the way they're singing, the lyrics themselves, somehow you can relate, even if you have no historical context there.
Yeah, well, it's also interesting when you think about these acts that are huge in non-English speaking countries. Like they're American or British acts, but then they're huge like globally. So people might not even know what the song is about. And so at some level, it doesn't actually matter what they're singing about. It matters the emotion that they're evoking in how the random words are coming together.
And I always just wonder, like, how that good music writing seems to me the most creative thing of all. Because it's literally the one thing where I can't imagine how they came up with these lyrics. And I really think these people are sort of unique. Like, did I ever tell you when I ran into Bono?
No.
So, like, you've met tons of famous people. Because of the podcast, I've met tons of famous people. But when you see someone like Bono, it's like a different experience. So I'm in an elevator in a hotel, and he walks in with some friends, and they were talking or bickering or something like that. And Bono's just he turns to me and says, look at these weirdos I'm with. And I just said something like, you really got to be careful about who you hang out with. Like, you're the average of the 5 people you spend your time with. And then as the elevator opens and they all leave, and then Bono turns to me and hugs me and whispers in my ear, "It's going to be okay, man." And then he leaves.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So it's just like he turned like this elevator ride into a work of art, at least for me.
So my Bono story was I was having dinner with this guy who runs a movie studio, and we were talking, and he was like, "Let's have dinner." And we had dinner at like the Beverly Hills Hotel, one of the fancy hotels.
Might have been the Beverly Hills Hotel. Actually.
I think it was, okay, so it's the Beverly Hills Hotel, and we're sitting there, and he goes, that's Bono over there. And I go, "Oh, wow, that's so cool." I was like, "He's the best." And he goes, "Here, I'm going to take you. I'm going to introduce you to him." And I was like, "Okay." And so we walk over, and he goes, he knows him very well. So he's like, "Hey, Bono." He's like, "Ryan, this is Bono, the lead singer of U2. And then he goes, "Bono, this is Ryan. Do you know the Daily Stoic?" And he's like, "No." And then I was like, "Why did you do that to me?" Like, I said to my friend, "Why did you ask Bono if I knew who I was?" Yeah, but you just set him up to obviously say no. And then just sort of all the air went out of the room because we didn't. And then so I shook his hand and left. But so my one Bono interaction was someone setting him up to say that he didn't know who I was.
Okay, so if you were Bono there, what is the way to respond where the air doesn't go out of the room?
Well, Bono didn't do anything wrong. He got set up.
He didn't do anything wrong.
Yes.
But I'm still thinking how he could have
kept... The politician's answer would be, "You look very familiar. Tell me about it." Or, "Yes, I do. I'm a huge fan." Like, I actually did meet this politician the other day. Someone did the similar thing. Like, "Do you know?" And he was like, "Oh, yes, I'm a huge fan," or whatever. And I felt like $1 million, And then as I was walking away, I was like, he didn't say anything specific that would prove that he did, but I wanted it to be true. And so obviously I suspended disbelief. And that's what great, personable, sort of charismatic people can make you in the moment feel like they see you and they recognize you and they connect with you, even though they're about to do that to the person next to you and the person next to you. And that's a super rare skill.
It's a rare skill. And you probably have had this experience just having a lot of politicians or actors. Same thing, by the way, politicians and actors, I've noticed. You've had a lot of politicians and actors on your podcast, as have I. And I always, when a good actor or politician I'm having a podcast with, I always end up thinking mid-podcast, is this my new best friend? Like, are we best friends? We're going to keep in touch. Like, we're going to hang out in LA or DC or whatever. And then you never hear from them again. Or even if you go to LA and say in text, like, "Hey, I'm here, like you said, or I should get in touch." Like, You never hear from them.
Yeah.
And they're so good at that. At first I was like, oh, he wasn't really my best friend. But then it's like you appreciate that they have this amazing. I wish I had that skill.
Well, no, the ability to do that to someone you're interacting with, that's like one elite level skill. And then the way somebody through their art can make a person they're not even directly interacting with feel that way. Yes. That's the most elite skill of all. Like that a movie star can make themselves feel like your friend or your hero, or that can connect with you through a camera reading, a script. That's an incredible skill. To elicit this sort of parasocial relationship is like, magic.
And I feel like you could tell when they don't have that skill. You could tell, particularly now where we don't just watch things, we then read about the things we're watching. So like you get this third layer of analysis, whether it's a politician speaking or an actor acting. But you could tell, oh, this person's acting. I feel like this person's acting. I feel like what this politician just said was not true, was not something they believe. But the really good ones, you cannot tell whether this is them or this is them reading a script.
Yeah, there's no sort of artifice, and it just feels natural. And then the part of it where you willingly suspend disbelief and allow yourself to enter the world or the mood or the story. And by the way, it's not just, this is like what demagogues do, right? This is what like bad leader, like it doesn't just have to be for good.
What you have to do because to be, otherwise everyone's going to say that's a demagogue. Like that's an evil person. Oh, Hitler's just evil. We're not going to vote for him.
No. He tells a story that you give yourself over to, and you turn off the part of your brain that's thinking about the consequences or the risks or the stupidity of it or the contradictions of it. That's a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah. But then, like you mentioned earlier, how like what they're really doing is just using their art to connect in such a way that you relate so much. You're like friends with them in your mind. And so then it can be said, writing then must be the hardest of all because you're at such a distance. They don't see anything but letters. I think the writer does feel it like I'm having this experience that probably, or it's almost like maybe a survivorship bias, but you write about your experience. And if it's something that's relatable to enough people, you really do make that connect. If you have the skill of writing, it underlies all these things. You need the actual artistic skill through practice, experience, maybe a little bit of talent. And then you come up with a story that's either true or not true, but it's by magic something that a lot of people have experienced or some people have experienced, so they relate to it or want to relate to it, and they connect with you. Like I've met a lot of my friends now because they've read my books.
Well, it's all art is magic, right? We don't really know where it comes from or why it works. But I think there's different potencies of the magic. Like there's something about music, it's like one note can evoke a mood, right? So there's something just extremely powerful about music. And so I think it can sometimes reach a higher plane. Like I feel like there are a handful of notes in a song that are more evocative than all the moods that all of my books combined have ever managed to get out of someone. Like,
and does that make you upset?
Yeah, I'm jealous. I'm genuinely jealous of the power of music.
Like, I wish I could have come up with Hotel California.
Sure.
And performed it on stage so I could actually see people responding to it.
Yeah.
But it's just never going to happen for me.
And like comedy has something where it's like you're on stage and there's the mic and then there's something about laughter specifically that's very powerful. I think writing is like, it's kind of crazy that writing works at all. Like the idea that just through strings of characters, which become words, which become sentences, which become paragraphs, and then a narrative, that I could convince someone that they should change their life in some way, or that they're capable of something, or that I can make them cry, or that I could make them, dedicate their lives to something. Like the power of the written word is incredible. It's just, I think it requires so much work to get it to do that.
This summer, Pluto TV is exploding with thousands of free movies. Summer of cinema is here. Feel the explosive action all summer long with movies like Gladiator, Mission Impossible, Beverly Hills Cop, Good Burger, and Transformers: Dark of the Moon. Bring the action with you and stream for free from all your favorite devices. Pluto TV. Stream now. Pay never.